Welcome back from the break, Matrix. Thank you so much for tuning in. Don't forget to enter that competition #WazAWinner on our Facebook page, WazAMatrix, and you could stand a chance to win 2 gigs of data. All right, so we've got a question and we'll head straight to it.
Hi Looney. What steps should you follow when analyzing a visual source? Please also give me some tips on how to write a paragraph.
Thank you for those questions, guys. So what we're going to do is we're going to deal with each question individually, and we are going to use last year's history paper 1 to show you how to answer those questions. Okay, let's move on. So when you're analyzing visual sources, it's very, very important to look at the visual clues. So this is similar to your textual source. Remember before the break we looked at a textual source and we read it, we highlighted the important words, we underlined, and we looked for dates and key figures and all that. So you need to do something similar when you are analyzing a visual source. And guys, remember that visual sources can come as cartoons or photographs, and there are different ways of analyzing each one of those. So let me just tell you the difference. When you're analyzing a photograph, you must know that a photograph captures a moment in time. So sometimes you will see things in a photograph that the photographer did not intend for them to be there. So it doesn't mean that every feature that shows in the photograph is important. However, when you're analyzing a cartoon, you need to remember that a cartoonist thought before they drew a cartoon, they thought about the message that they wanted to convey. So every little detail that is found in the cartoon is very, very important. There is nothing that will be in a cartoon by mistake. So that is what you need to know when you are comparing the 2 visual sources. In a photograph, there are things that can be there by chance, but you cannot find that in a cartoon. Okay. And then another thing is you have to identify the origin of a source. Just like we did with the textual source, it's very important to know who wrote the source, when it was written, okay? And sometimes they can even give you the reasons why that source was made. Okay. You need to study the text in the source. So most visual sources, especially cartoons, will have text, even if it's just one word. That word is a clue to answering a question. It is a clue to conveying a particular message that the cartoonist wanted to convey. Okay, what happens is in some photographs you will not find texts, but in cartoons you will find a lot of text. Okay, you have to look for symbols as well. So symbols can be things like you need to look at the buildings that are there, you need to look at the clothes that people are wearing, because those things can tell you a lot about the context, where this was happening. If you're looking at a war situation, do you see any weapons in this visual source to show that it was a war situation? You need to look at the body language as well, because the body language helps you understand what was going on and how the people were feeling at that particular time when that event was taking place. So please look for all those things. You look at the surroundings. If you see people sitting, what are their surroundings? Because those things will tell you where the event took place. Okay. And then you also need to consider the shape and size of the characters. So this applies more specifically to cartoons. Because again, remember I told you that a cartoon is drawn by a cartoonist to convey a particular message. So if maybe a cartoonist wanted to show that this one leader of a country or this country was a bully, they're likely to show them as very big or show them as evil to show that they were bad people or they had bad intentions. So it's very important to look at all those symbols. Okay. And you need to use your knowledge of the topic in your analysis. Now, if you look at all these things that I've discussed with you, you will see that they don't tell you everything about the event. They are just clues to the event. So again, that is where your own knowledge comes in. It's very important for you to make sense of what was going on based on the visual clues that you see there. Okay, I hope that helps you understand how to analyze a visual source. Okay, so as I said, we are going to use an example from last year's paper just to show you what sort of things to look for in a visual source. So the question is, explain the messages that are conveyed in the cartoon regarding the USA's involvement in the Angolan Civil War. And it says here, this is very important, it says, use the visual clues in the source to support your answer. So if you look at this question, again, remember I told you earlier that the mark allocation is very important. So this is 2 times 2. That means this question is out of 4 marks. So the 2 marks are obviously for the message that you're supposed to give. The cartoon itself does not give you the message. It can just give you a caption and then you will see the cartoon. It's up to you to come up with the message based on your understanding and your analysis of that cartoon. And once you've given that message that is conveyed by that cartoon, you then need to support it with the visual clues in the source itself. Okay, so let's look at our example here. So you can see this is a cartoon and it says, there is the text, as I said before, that it's very important to look at the text. It says, if you liked Vietnam, you'll love this. So already you can see that there is a comparison here between the war in Vietnam and the war in Angola. And you can see the word Angola is written in big letters. These letters are in your face, so you can see. And how can you see that this is a war situation? Okay, you can see a fighter jet there. It's a war situation. And it looks like there is a lot of fire going on in the background as well. So already there is turmoil that is going on here. Okay, but what is very important is this comparison. Because again, you will have read the questions and you should be able to conclude why that comparison was made. Why do you think this cartoonist felt it important to compare what was going on in Angola to what happened in Vietnam? So if you look at this cartoon, it requires your prior knowledge of the Vietnam War. Okay, so again, it goes back to those choices that you have to make when you answer these questions, that you should have studied that section even if you're not choosing Vietnam, but you should have prior knowledge of what happened there, because otherwise you will not be able to see what the cartoonist is trying to say here. Okay, now let's move on to the question to see if you've understood how to analyze the source. Okay, so the key ideas in your answer there, remember I told you that the question was, you have to tell us what the message of the cartoon was, okay, and you need to use visual clues from the cartoon. So the key answers that you can give there are, it shows the United States' secretive and covert military involvement in Angola. It depicts that Angola will be destroyed during the conflict. You can see the bullet holes and bombs and the smoke. Remember, I did circle those things when we were looking at the actual cartoon. And now this is the important one. It states that the war would cost American taxpayers millions of dollars, and it gives a negative perspective. The war would have led to the death of many people. Okay, now guys, remember, these are just the suggested responses. As I said to you, you are using your own words. There are different ways of answering a question like this, as long as you can support your answer with the visual clues from the source. That is what is important. So let's carry on. It states that the CIA and Henry Kissinger were in favor of the USA's involvement in Angola. It suggests that the American experience in Vietnam would be repeated in Angola. Now, guys, remember, I told you when I circled or underlined those words in the actual cartoon that you have to know or have prior knowledge of the Vietnam War to understand why the cartoonist would have used that word in a situation in Angola. So as you can see in this response here, it suggests that the American experience in Vietnam would be repeated in Angola. Even if you don't know all the details of what happened in Vietnam, but it's important for you to see that the cartoonist is making the comparisons. Okay, so that is very important. And then any other relevant response. As I said to you guys, as long as it is relevant and as long as you can support it with evidence from the source, then you will be fine. Okay, I hope that helps you understand how to analyze a visual source. Now, another question was how to answer or write paragraph questions. You have to use relevant evidence. Don't just repeat your note. You are not expected to write everything you know. Okay, and use evidence very effectively in an organized paragraph that shows an understanding of the topic. So what you'll be expected to do is to write a paragraph that will be based on the different sources. The instruction will tell you which sources to read in order to write that paragraph. And when you're writing that paragraph, it's also very important to use both the information contained in the sources plus your own knowledge. Because you saw when we were answering the short questions that there were some questions that required use of own knowledge. So please make sure that there is a balance between the two. And please make sure that it is a paragraph. You are not expected to write an essay here, but you are writing a paragraph. Okay. Don't just repeat or rephrase the sources. You have to use your own words. Just like when you were answering those short questions where they were asking for definition or description or analysis, in the paragraph, you're expected to show your understanding of the sources and putting together all that information in your own words. If you just repeat the sources, that means you have not done anything. Okay, you have to show that you have the skills to analyze and then rewrite in your own words. And as I've already said, you have to incorporate your own knowledge. That shows that you understand the context. It shows that you've studied. Do not go over the word limit of 8 lines, about 80 words. Okay, as I said to you earlier, it is a paragraph. It is not an essay. So just make sure that you do not include irrelevant information, because that is what makes the paragraphs longer. It's if you include everything you know about the event. No. Read the instructions and answer the question. That is very important. And then, when writing essays, because again, remember, in this paper one of the questions that you will have to choose has to be an essay question. So, it is very important that you include an introduction, body, and conclusion in your essay. You cannot just write a paragraph. Again, you have to know how to write an essay. And in your introduction, you have to take a stance. If the question is, do you agree? That has to be in the introduction, that you agree. Okay. If the question is to what extent, the extent has to be shown in the introduction. Because if you have not done that, then you have not given a good impression. Remember, the introduction is the first thing that the marker reads. So it has to give a good impression. It has to show them that you have control of the information and you know exactly how you are going to argue. And then you have to repeat the stance you've taken in the introduction. You have to repeat it in the conclusion. It's very important. Don't add irrelevant background information. This is not asking you to write everything you know. It's asking you to focus on a specific question that was asked. Content should not be descriptive. What you are expected to do in an essay is to develop a line of argument. Okay, not just to repeat your notes or your textbook. You have to argue. Okay, and then you have to draw a convincing conclusion. Please make sure you don't change your stance in your conclusion. And it has to be in line with the way that you have argued throughout the essay. That is very important. I hope this will help you succeed in your history paper 1. I wish you all the best. Over to you, Luni.
Thank you so much, Mamsi. Matrix, you've been awesome today. Thank you so much for tuning in. And a shout out to all of our winners who will be announced after the show on the Was a Matrix Facebook page. Well, we'll be back with more revision on your #1 educational channel. But for now, from me, Looney, Keta, and Mamsi, it's a thank you and goodbye.